Hey everybody, it's Maria Malott, the Lullaby Lady at SavvyParentingSupport.com, and I am here today to talk about why babies, and sometimes toddlers, don't sleep. We're going to go into the science of it, and also just a few things that you might be able to do to get a little bit better sleep for yourself and your babies as well, just by looking at that science. So I know it's going to take a while for Facebook to tell people that that I'm around and doing this. So let's give Facebook just a second. Hang in there with me, and I'm going to bring up my page on refresh my page on my computer so that I can see all of your comments. You're welcome to give me comments and questions before and during and after I get into all the information. And if you are getting to this video late and we're already done and you're watching it, please give me your comments anyway. I'll see them. I'll be able to respond to you. Okay. Let's see, does it show that I'm on? There I am. Okay, great. So I'll be able to see your comments here and your questions. And until then, and while Facebook is loading some folks, I'm just going to kind of do lecture style, talking about babies, toddlers, and sleep, and why we feel like we're not getting enough sleep. Why aren't those babies sleeping? So all babies do sleep, right? And we don't hear these, we don't hear tales of my baby starved himself of sleep and therefore he's unhealthy, because he wakes frequently or something like that. So babies do sleep, right? They sleep. They don't sleep the way we want them to sleep. For sure. They don't sleep as much as we want them to sleep. They don't have the sleeping pattern that we have. But for the most part, most babies are usually getting enough sleep for them. It's usually not in the way that we want it to happen. Usually most parents are pretty good at offering opportunities for enough sleep. But what we parents usually mean when we say, my baby doesn't sleep, is that babies wake frequently. And sometimes we're waking frequently as a newborn. Sometimes we're waking frequently at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Sometimes we're still waking frequently at 2. So they're waking frequently. So that's one thing we're going to talk about. Another thing we can talk about is that babies, and especially toddlers, sometimes are resistant to going to bed, especially that first time of night, sometimes for naps. So those are the things that we usually mean when we say, my baby doesn't sleep. Now, there are some very rare sleep disorders that actually make it harder for kids to go to sleep. Even obstructive sleep apnea, usually those kids are sleeping for a long period of time. So really, we're talking today about frequent night waking, and we're going to talk a little bit about basically bedtime aversion or nap aversion. So there are 4 reasons why babies wake frequently, especially babies. We're talking about babies, and we'll add on toddlers a little bit later. So babies need to wake frequently, right? So let's start at the beginning. You have a brand new baby, and whether your baby is breastfed or bottle fed, your baby needs to eat frequently because your baby has a very tiny tummy, a very small stomach. And we're trying to pack on the calories to live and thrive and grow very rapidly. So we got to grow very, very rapidly, and we have a very tiny stomach. And also, we're designed with these mammaries, and the mammaries only produce so much milk at one particular time. So there's only so much milk at one particular feeding time. The tummy is small, and your baby has to grow really fast. So now we're waking frequently just so that we can eat. And if you have a newborn baby who's been a sleepy newborn or a preemie, you'll know that sometimes we have to wake them to eat. So they're feeding frequently. So pretty much everybody starts out feeding frequently. So that's where we're starting from with sleep. I have to get up all of the time. I have to wake frequently in order to eat. Number 2 would be babies have short sleep cycles. That's the other reason. So even after we grow out of having to eat so frequently in the night, babies still have short sleep cycles. And every individual child is going to be different with sleep cycles. So it's going to be a 30-minute sleep cycle, a 45-minute sleep cycle, or an hour and a half sleep cycle, depending on what age that child is and what's normal for that child. So the folks who come to me and say, I don't know what to do, I have a 3-month-old, 4-month-old, 5-month-old baby who is only napping for 30 minutes at a time, and my friend's child is napping for an hour and a half at a time, and I feel like I'm going to go crazy. I never have any time to myself. I know how it is, because my first one was a 30-minute napper. Many naps per day, but a 30-minute napper. So that can be a normal daytime short sleep cycle. So from 30 minutes to an hour and a half, and your child might be different than everybody else's child, but babies do have short sleep cycles. Now we know that it's possible to have longer sleep cycles, and we also know, because we have friends who have kids who might like sleep through the night or something, we also know that it's possible to somehow get more sleep than we're getting, to not be woken up all of the time. And what's happening there is that those kids are rolling over into one sleep cycle into the next without needing to wake you up or get anything. And that sort of winds up being the holy grail that we all, as human beings, eventually get to, is that we don't need help in order to get from one sleep cycle to another. We as human adults, we wake frequently during the night, and sometimes we know it and we get up to pee, and other times we don't know it. We haven't fully come into consciousness. We've come out of REM sleep and into a state of consciousness, but it's not something we're going to remember, because all our body does is it goes, oh, I'm in the bed. That's exactly what I was doing when I fell asleep, and I roll over and go back to bed. So we don't even know that this is something that's happening to us, but we all wake frequently throughout the night, because our sleep cycle might only be 3 hours. That's not that much longer, right? But we are still waking up. So it's these short sleep cycles that feels really challenging. But it's, what do we do? What happens for that baby after the sleep cycle? So we're going to go a little more deeply into that. And from there, we have this baby who wakes up, and whether it's something that's really natural like feeding, and especially we get into the habit for nutrition and growth of frequently feeding, or feeding every single time the baby wakes up out of a sleep, great, natural and normal. Or we might have other sleep associations. So there are these strong sleep associations. So let's talk about sleep associations. 2 main kinds. One is that babies suck. And in the lactation professions, there's this joke where we say, we're talking about lactation and education about lactation, why do babies suck so much? And it's kind of silly. It's not that babies suck, it's just that babies need to suck all of the time, whether they're getting nutrients or whether they're not getting nutrients. So they suck a lot, right? And they want to suck as much as possible. Sometimes they go to sleep sucking, right? And then if they wake up out of their sleep cycle and they're not sucking anymore because something is no longer in their mouth, then they will wonder what the heck happened there, and can you please, if I'm going to go back into another sleep cycle, can you please put something back in my mouth? Because that's how I sleep, that's how I fall asleep. So you're kind of probably at this point starting to get the picture of sort of where we're going with things. It's not that we ever stop feeding the baby. It's not that we night wean at any particular time or necessarily ever. But it's just this idea to keep in mind of the idea of strong sleep associations. So sucking is a very normal, very biologic sleep association. So feeding to sleep or sucking to sleep, whether that be the breast, the bottle, the pacifier. So that's the oral sleep association. So by 3 months of age, most normal infants will have developed this normal oral sleep association, right? So that's usually going to be the primary sleep association. There might be that sleep association, but with some other sleep associations, or it might be just this other one, which number 2 is the movement association. So especially when our babies first come out into the world and they're tiny and they're struggling to adjust to life in our world, some have a harder time than others. Especially babies who are having tummy trouble or what we call colic or just struggling in any way. Our culture has really told us that what we need to do is what I call bring the circus, which is our culture has told us we need to bounce and we need to walk and we need to shush and we need to do all these things. And oftentimes parents get into this very exhausting pattern of doing all of these things in order to get baby to sleep. And sometimes babies just develop a sleep association that's like, I just like to be bounced to sleep. Or sometimes babies will develop a sleep association that includes, I need to have these 4 things in this particular order or I cannot go to sleep. And that's what I call bringing the circus, is bringing those things to the child to sleep, to help them sleep every single time they wake up and need to go back to sleep. I do think it can be really exhausting. So with the movement sleep association, that might be something, again, like bouncing, like walking, like rocking, like a yoga ball. It actually might be that babies need to be swaddled so that they can't have that Moro reflex movement, that they actually need lack of movement. So swaddling can become a really strong sleep association. Swings become very strong sleep associations. Sometimes I have clients who come and have, 6, 7, 8-month-old in a swing who has way outgrown the weight limit. And what our job together to do is to figure out how to gently wean the child from that, because that's not sustainable or safe. So just to kind of think about movement sleep associations, oral sleep associations, these are some clues to how, not just how you can prevent some sleep challenges in the future, but how you might be able to just begin to think about changing some things that might be headed that direction. Definitely toddlers who are experiencing really frequent waking have some really strong sleep associations. Sometimes moms by that point with toddlers are ready to night wean at that point, because it just seems like the next step to help with sleep, and it usually does help with sleep, but it doesn't have to be cold turkey or anything like that. It can really be a gradual, gentle process. And there are other things to do for toddlers too that don't involve that. So some thoughts that I have for you, I'm going to give you some ideas for how to really circumnavigate these things, or how to change them a little bit, gradually, gently. I also want to talk to you about, other reasons why babies might be waking frequently, and then talk about what could be happening with not wanting to go to sleep. But I just want to remind everybody that you can give me questions and comments. I'm going to keep refreshing my page here on my computer so that I can see anything that you have for me. So questions and comments, even if I don't see them, it sometimes is a little bit of a lag, so if I don't see them right away, I'll at least see them at the end. So welcome everybody. And so that next part, let's go quickly into what might be happening with bedtime aversion. So that's the other, why doesn't my baby sleep, right? So sometimes instead of the frequent night waking, sometimes we're talking about a baby who just doesn't want to go to bed at bedtime, might sleep well through the night, but doesn't want to go to bed at bedtime, and might not want to go to bed for naps either. So that one I'm going to make just really kind of short and sweet. In my experience, in my practice, I 20 years of working with kiddos and my own, my suggestions for those things are going to be that your child may actually not be sleepy enough. If there is too much sleep in a 24-hour period, right? So you might read a book and go, this book says my child is 12 months old and she still needs to sleep for 12 hours at night. So you might read slightly different things here and there about sleep, but each individual is different. So the real sleep science about individuals, both babies and children, shows that we really vary in how much sleep we need. So it's really important to pay attention to that child. And then think about, for that child, from what I've seen, from how much that child actually sleeps or has been able to sleep, how much sleep does that child really need in a 24-hour period of time? If we sleep all day, we are going to wake frequently at night. We won't be sleepy enough to ever just roll back into another sleep cycle. If we're 2 years old and we have a 4-hour nap, we are not going to want to go to sleep. If we have a 2-hour nap that's close to bedtime and ends after dark, we are not going to want to go to sleep until 10, 11 o'clock, maybe even later at night. So really looking at the 24-hour period, especially for toddlers. For younger babies, it can be overstimulation, just that baby has a hard time focusing just on the task at hand, which is calming down and going to sleep, and might have been overstimulated before that. For older babies and toddlers, understimulation can be a problem. Did we get outside in the sun today? Did we have a lot of crawling, walking time today? Did we get out? Did we play with people? Did we play with our adults? Did we really have enough stimulation? That can definitely be the thing that's needed to make kiddos tired enough to really not fight bedtime. So those are just some ideas. And I see Zara here, who says, we are dealing with sucking association during nap times. If I miss the first sleep cycle of 15 to 20 minutes, then the nap is over when I know she's capable of napping 1 to 2 hours. Yeah, so I don't know what you mean by missing the sleep cycle, but I'm wondering if you mean that if you don't nurse her right at that 20-minute point when she wakes up, or maybe you're doing like a 20-minute kind of like a sleep kind of you're kind of sleepy and I'm going to give you a feed, right? So it sounds like with napping, the struggle is, in order to get into a long nap, you need she's needing multiple sleep cycles. What those sleep cycles are for her, or him. Oh, she. Yeah, that's right. So in that case, it's going to be one of those situations where one thing could be are the naps maybe too frequent? I don't remember the age of the baby. It might be that the naps are too frequent and we're not actually sleepy enough to just roll from one sleep cycle into another one. It could be kind of like you could be on a amount of naps lessening, kind of gradual organic situation happening there that kind of needs to be written out. Or it could just be that you need to end the nursing to sleep association, and when it isn't so present for her, she will be able to roll right back into that sleep cycle by herself. But as long as she's continuing to wake after that amount of time and you continue to do the feed, it probably will go along like that for the most part. So in that case, that's always one of the most difficult challenges, because it's daytime, so it can be really hard to say like, oh yeah, you need to sleep more and I'm not going to nurse you down. So it just feels impossible. It sounds like we're just going to have that 20 minutes of sleep and that's all we're going to have. But my suggestion would be, make sure there's enough if it's only going to be a 15-minute nap because you are working on ending the oral sleep association, then I would offer another nap later, not into the dark hours, but if another one needs to happen because she's tired, I would offer again like a short one, like a 15-minute nap. and then end after that 15-minute cat nap. So that would be one way to go into it. But ultimately, if we think about it in terms of our job is to offer opportunities, just like in feeding, offer opportunities for our kids to sleep. Here's the opportunity, here's the time, you fall asleep. If you roll back into your sleep cycle, that's great. If you call me and I come and snuggle with you and that's what I feel like doing and you fall back asleep like that and I want to nap too, that's great. But if your feeling is that you don't want to have a nap situation where it's a little short nap and then a nursing session and then another short nap, then you probably need to give it a few days of just having it be that short nap and then offering another nap later, so that she's not just hoping and expecting every single time that she's going to get a nice long nap, because you'll feed her in between the sleep cycles. I hope that's helpful. You're saying that she's, when she wakes again, she's cranky. Yeah, and that might be okay. She's 4.5 months, so I would maybe think about doing any of those changes. Like if it says you're interested in ending nursing to sleep, she's still really young, but if you want to kind of gradually work toward that, I would suggest, rather than doing anything like suddenly ending the nursing to sleep association, think about starting with nights, because it's just easier for kids to fall asleep at night than it is for naps, and put that what I call the wedge of time, which is we're going to nurse, you're going to have a full belly, and you might even at 4.5 months fall asleep on my breast or on the bottle, but I'm going to kind of wake you up enough, like not to the point that you're drowsy, but that you're really awake and you know that I'm putting you down and maybe snuggling up next to you, or maybe just sitting with you with a hand on you, and that I'm here and you've been fed, and we're going to give you some time and an opportunity to fall asleep without the breast or the nipple actually in the mouth. So putting a little wedge of time and having your kiddo know that they're going to be like not on it while they're sleeping. So that would be the first thing that I would try and kind of gradually work toward that idea, since you're only at 4.5 months. So I hope that's helpful. It doesn't mean that we're not going to feed, Okay. Great. So I'm just going to get back to a couple of things here. So we talked about overstimulation, understimulation. Just kind of try and keep tabs on that, pay attention to it, maybe write some notes down so you can kind of see a pattern about what days are good sleep days and what days are not good sleep days. I'll say that there's always a good sleep day for most kids if they've gotten lots of outdoor time, or if they've had a long bath, or if they've had like swimming water play. So hopefully as the weather starts to get a little bit warmer, more folks can do that. So Erin, hi Erin, says that Alma sleeps fine on her back in the bed with you at night, but for naps she will not go down on her back, which means that you hold her a lot. She hates swaddling with a loud passion. I don't recommend swaddling anyway, unless we have a really, really little baby and there's no other way that we can ever calm them. I'm trying to see any tips for getting a back sleep hating baby to like sleeping on the back. So the truth, I'm not afraid to say it, of infant sleep positioning is that there are different schools of thought. There are breastfeeding and attachment-based schools of thought about infant sleep, and there are sort of more mainstream schools of thought. And the reason that we have babies sleep on their backs in a crib or for a nap away from a parent is that we have decided that that is the safest way for a baby to sleep, because we are worried about sudden infant death when a baby sleeps in any other position. They had determined that that would be the safest position to prevent a crib death. Now, if you go back and look at all of that information, as a bunch of researchers and doctors have done, most of the babies who have suffered in those situations where they weren't in the right sleep position were also formula-fed babies. So there are many, many factors in play here, but what I was going to say is that the truth of what's really happening for infant sleep is that they were not meant to sleep on their backs unless they were kind of curled in to a parent, right? Or in the crook of the arm, and sometimes their head is up on the arm here. Sometimes they're like a little bit on their side curled into you. Or sometimes they're just comfortable enough and secure enough to be in the bed on their back because they can feel that you're right next to them. But generally, when they don't feel that secure, if they're by themselves and someone warm is not breathing on them, they tend to have more of the startle reflex and just have a much harder time. It's much easier as they get older, but they tend to have a harder time falling asleep like that. Because babies really were not meant to sleep like that, apart from their caregiver. It's just that we believe that that is the safest thing. So babies sleep really well if we put them on our tummies, but we can't tell you to do that because it might not be safe for that baby. So it depends on a whole lot of factors. And people do choose to do it, and oftentimes they've looked at a whole list of factors in terms of will that be okay. There are some gastroenterologists who work with babies who have really bad reflux, who tell babies of refluxy babies that they should lay on their tummy, and sometimes you'll see those reflux wedges, and baby is actually tummy sleeping on that. So there are some circumstances where we actually see babies sleeping like that. And yes, Jessica, I see your comment. I will get to that. And so it is harder, Erin, for sure, for babies to be away from a parent and if they don't want to be swaddled and they're sleeping on their back. What I would suggest would be to talk about sleep risks and age of the baby with the baby's caregiver, and ask if it might be a possibility just during the daytime for your baby to sleep in a side position with one rolled up baby blanket propped around the chest, not one behind, but one in the front. And I don't know if Alma will sleep on her side, but that can really, really help. If you haven't tried that consistently yet, I would talk about that with your care provider. So that's one idea that I have. But sometimes babies just have a harder time, sleeping without a parent in general. And will either have a hard time going down or will have a hard time staying asleep for more than 15 or 20 minutes. And definitely send me some more information, give me some more questions and talking points, and I can answer that even better as well. So Jessica has a 2-year-old who nurses to bed, wakes up 5 to 6 times to nurse. And Jessica's tandem nursing with her 9-month-old as well. That's a lot, Mommy. You say Mommy needs some sleep for sure. That is a lot. That's like you're probably working all day, either somewhere else or with the kiddos, and working all night, feeding, nursing little ones. So that really is a lot of work. For a 2-year-old, is really capable of sleeping for longer periods of time, right? But if we are used to falling asleep with the nipple in the mouth, then every single time your 2-year-old comes up out of her, 1.5 to 3 hour sleep cycle, she or he is going to need you to help recreate that. So she can fall back asleep. And so it's a 2-year-old who still has a really strong oral sleep association. At 2 years old, it's really easy, much easier to communicate about boundaries. So I will put in definitely a link for you that we will help you talk a little bit about like nursing and mom body boundaries and how to talk and communicate with kiddos about making any kind of changes to the nighttime arrangement. So I'll put a couple of articles there. But in general, I would say if you want to just start with something simple, think about putting that wedge of time and allowing your 2-year-old to have whatever feelings she has, and she will have them, about whatever boundary you have put on that you actually want to nurse and then be done and have her find out a way. Because every baby, sorry, I'm going to plug in my phone so it doesn't die. I'll put you over here. Every baby, whether they are new or older, and it happens at all different ages, every person needs to at some point figure out how they get themselves to sleep. And I don't call it self-soothing, because the real people just misconstrue that. Real self-soothing is real. It's like, I know how to suck my thumb and get myself to sleep. I rub my hair. That's the real self-soothing. I don't call most sleep training methods self-soothing, but there are ways that humans do soothe themselves to sleep. And if we continue to do the same thing that requires our help constantly, and we just continue to do that, then we're not giving the opportunity for our child to figure out, well, even if I'm present, even if I'm right next to you, even if we're bed sharing, what is the way that you're going to help yourself get to sleep? Are you going to thrash your legs on the bed? Are you going to sing to yourself? Are you going to rub your head? Are you going to suck your thumb? Many, many, many things that kids do, and they all figure something out, and they either figure it out at 6 months, or they figure it out at 9 months, or they figure it out at 2 years. But it's giving that opportunity to do something different. And, you know, when there's a 2-year-old and we're having sleep challenges, it's not just sleep challenges, right? It's kind of sometimes it's a battle of the wills. So I always, when I'm working with clients, I always look at that from a combination of sleep and a gentle discipline perspective, so that we can get really good respectful communication happening there for a 2-year-old. And we know when we have a 2-year-old, right, that it's not only sleep time that creates crying. So we're kind of used to having some challenges with setting boundaries at other times. And so that sometimes makes it a little bit easier for us to understand that it's not all about that we are doing something that's mean to the child. It's just that with any boundary, toddlers have challenges, and we all as human beings want to do things the way that we're used to doing them and the habit that we're used to doing them with. And it takes a couple days of getting over that hump of realizing that a change is real and that it's okay to have all of my feelings. And I understand, Jessica, I know that idea has got to be a lot harder when you have another kiddo, right? So if you're wanting to let someone kind of experience their feelings with your boundary, what I call, you being the compassionate witness to your child's struggle with your boundary, if you go about that idea and you have another little person who's trying to sleep, that can be really challenging. But I've done it with a lot of clients, and I really suggest working with that first child first, because it winds up being kind of good modeling, both for parenting and both for the younger child. And just sometimes the littler ones will just after 1 or 2 days just sleep right through it, and then you're kind of done with getting over that hump anyway by that time. So I wouldn't suggest things like you're saying you've tried cuddling and rocking. You can do that kind of gently, but sometimes those things can become their own sleep associations, and then you have to put a whole lot of work into it. But I would suggest just being present. Just allowing your child to have their feelings and being present so they know that you're there. And we don't have to do a whole lot of things. We just need to make sure that our child's actual needs are met and that we're there and that they feel safe. It says you tried the Dr. Jay Gordon method since 11 months with breaks here and there. Sometimes by 11 months, and I know it's the Gordon method is, and he's an amazing person, the suggestion of doing it really gradually like that, with having those short kind of figuring out how frequently you want to do a feed. One thing that can happen there is it can be so gradual with the Gordon method that for someone who's becoming a toddler, it can be really confusing to them. Are we nursing to sleep at this time, or are we not nursing to sleep? Because they don't tell time yet. So in my own experience, before I was the sleep coach that I needed, and did the Jay Gordon method, that was the challenge with it for me, for toddlers. So sometimes some kids, depending on how strong-willed they are, and everybody has a different personality, but in those situations, sometimes gradual is actually just harder to understand. Why are we sometimes nursing and sometimes not nursing, and all of that. So I really do suggest, not necessarily ending nursing, but putting that wedge of time between nursing and actually falling asleep. And then it might be, I work with three different methods of night weaning, more and less gradual, depending on what the family needs and what the mom needs and how quickly she needs it and what's the personality of the child. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I hope that that's been helpful a little bit. Let's see. Oh, and I see somebody else here. Kimberly. Hi, Kimberly. How do you deal with this with a 16-month-old? So kind of similar to what I was talking about with Jessica's story with a 2-year-old. Kind of similar ideas that we communicate the best. I'm so glad you got help, Jessica. Thank you. Just that we think about the idea of looking at ourselves, like, do I want to nurse all night? Do I want to feed all night? If it is a sleep association that then requires me to be up every single time, says my connection's weak, so I'm going to give it just a second to see if I can fix my connection. Move it over here, see if that does anything. So with a 16-month-old, again, just thinking about how frequently you are comfortable feeding, if that is a sleep association that is causing frequent night waking and causing you to be needed all the time in the night. You kind of get to decide, what do you want to do, and is there a gentle way that you can communicate with your 16-month-old about when you're nursing and when you're not nursing? Can you put a wedge of time between actually having a nursing session and falling asleep? Is it possible for you to, and do you feel comfortable with a 16-month-old who has challenges in other things in life as well with boundaries? Can you be present to that little person's feelings about any changes in boundaries that you want to make with your body or with your night? And can you be present, and can you have the actual needs be met, and not do that one thing that they're just used to, that's a habit, that is a habit because oral sleep associations are normal. It's become a habit because it started from a little newborn baby who needed to wake up to frequently eat all of the time. So yes, for some families, sleep associations become a real challenge. And sometimes they come out of very normal, good parenting. Almost all the time they do, right? So they come out of good parenting. Sometimes they come out of the good parenting of just always nursing your baby. Sometimes they come out of the good parenting of everyone said I needed to shush and rock and bounce. And that was good parenting, right? Because that was what you felt was helping your baby at that time. And it worked, right? So, everybody's doing everything they can. And I just wanted to bring this video to folks because it's not that the baby doesn't sleep, right? It's that there are some challenges with sleep associations where we are required to help the baby sleep, right? So we are required to have a lot of help at night. So nighttime parenting is normal. It's going to happen. We need to be involved in our children's lives at night too. And then I started my business because I was one of those moms who was like, what is going on here? I thought I knew everything. I thought I could do this sleep thing. I actually knew all kinds of sleep methods. I had done them with kids that I worked with forever. I wasn't really comfortable doing them once I was a parent with my own child. So I didn't do a lot. And then I kind of just thought I was going to lose my mind, and I started to kind of try some things. I tried the No Cry Sleep solution. The Pantley pull off in that book can be really helpful, especially for new babies, when you're just trying to kind of move out of the room to get something done. And then eventually that didn't work for us. So I sort of became this person who was trying to learn as much as I could, and I eventually fixed it kind of in my own way. And then for some friends who were experiencing the same thing, I then kind of thought, maybe it really is all about the sleep association thing, and maybe there is a gentle way to do it, and maybe you don't have to leave the baby in the room, and maybe there are multiple methods here, maybe there are multiple ways to night wean, maybe it can be really gentle, maybe it can be really respectful. And I've just sort of built on that from then. But I want everybody to know that you're doing a great job. Just because you're asking for some help, like listening to some help, trying to get some free help, trying to get some paid help, trying to talk to your friends, you're doing great. The sleep thing's real hard. It's one of the hardest things that you'll ever go through with parenting. Actually, probably the hardest. So thanks for tuning in with me. Let's see if I have anything here I haven't covered. I have a few notes. The tips I want to reiterate to you are the idea of varying sleep positions and ways that children fall asleep. So if you can give opportunities of different kinds of falling asleep, especially in the beginning, and not have only one way that your child falls asleep and needs you for, or needs a swing for, or something like that, that might be hard to always provide. Just really starting to vary the way that they sleep. We talked about shoving that wedge of time between that sleep association thing, like rocking or nursing to sleep, between that and the child actually falling asleep, so that they actually know they're falling asleep in some other way when they finally fall asleep. And then just give opportunities, to sleep after a feed with maybe just a hand on or a little bit of fussing and your presence, so that the feeding is still happening. It's just that we're not falling asleep with that thing in the mouth. Last question from Sarah. Should I create space in my living room to nap during the day instead of trying to get her to nap in a room? I think usually the safest sleep space for a child is going to be on a mattress, wherever that mattress may be. I think a room is probably fine. We definitely don't want to sleep on a couch or anything like that. A room alone. Oh, okay. Rather than having her sleep in a room alone, should she sleep maybe in the living room alone? Is that what you mean? I think probably the way that I look at naps, I hope this answers the question, because I'm not exactly sure about the question, but I hope this answers the question. Oh, you also have a 4-year-old, so you can't stay in the room with the 4-year-old while the little one naps. Yeah. So it changes a little bit when you have more kids to the mix, right? Especially when you have more kids. This is the way I'm going to tell you that I think about naps. Not most other sleep gurus actually are not going to think about naps this way. I tend to tell people to focus on nighttime sleep. And for naps, that you might give your child some opportunities to not have that same sleep association. But for naps, that kind of tends to fall in line a little bit better once your child is sleeping really well at night. So I tend to say naps are challenging during the day, especially if you have multiple kids, or if you're not able to just leave one child alone and have them just sleep for that nap while you are with the other child. Then I tend to say do some baby wearing naps, do some car naps, just vary some naps, have some car seat naps if you happen to be in the car, do some baby wearing naps if your child happens to fall asleep like that. Kind of vary those things. You said she's a great nighttime sleeper. So naps might be a challenge for you guys. If she's a great nighttime sleeper, she just might need less nap time. So you might actually kind of have less naps so that it's easier for her to fall asleep. So if she's getting a lot of sleep time, in the night. She might need a little bit less frequent naps during the day. I'm not sure, I don't know, you guys, but that's just one hint that I have. We can keep messaging about this too as I go off, and I gotta get off so that I can go get some food for myself. This is the longest talking I've done, and I think 6 weeks I haven't been able to come and do any Facebook Lives because I've been ill with some kind of crazy virus that never went away. So I'm glad to be back on. I'm glad that I can help you guys. Continue to chat with me here. We can keep talking, and have a really great day, everybody. So again, it's Maria at SavvyParentingSupport.com.